Dead Art Studios, and we're doing a Wiki Art deep dive today. Richard Hambleton. It says here, Richard Art Hambleton. Now, whether he was gifted that name at birth or added it himself, I do not know, but I find it pretty interesting and kind of cool. He was born on June the 23rd in 1952 in Vancouver in Canada, and he died in New York in 2017, so quite recently. So he is classed as American and Canadian, and his art movement was street art, but also he liked to call it public art that he made for the public that people could see. He started off as a street artist, a graffiti style artist, and moved into gallery work later in his life. He was friends with the famous street artist and painter Jean-Michel Basquiat and also Keith Haring, and was part of their sort of founding group of New York street artists in the 1980s, along with the sort of overarching, onlooking artist that was Andy Warhol, who was like some kind of scene puppet master maybe for the whole kind of pop art movement that emerged around that time. Okay, so let's just have a quick read through his Wikipedia article here on Wiki Art, and then we'll have a look at the paintings. So Richard Art Hambleton is a Canadian artist known for his work as a street artist. He was a surviving member of a group that emerged from New York, the New York art scene, during the booming art market of the 1980s, which also included Keith Haring and Basquiat, as we said. Now, those two guys died young. Basquiat at 27, part of the famous 27 group of musicians and artists that died at that age, and Keith Haring, who I think was 32 or 33 and died of AIDS. Hambleton was born in 1952, and he received an advanced diploma from the Vancouver School of Art in Vancouver, so trained as an artist in 1975. He also founded and became a co-director of Pump's Centre for Alternative Art, a gallery, performance and video space in Vancouver. Interesting to know if that was still going today. So his early public art included his image mass murder art, which was basically he'd go out onto the streets of New York and paint these sort of white lines of an outline of a murdered person, and then tried to recreate a blood splatter on the floor from his red paint, and he was trying to get the tint and the hue and the look of blood, and it was supposed to, make people be shocked, really. So as it says here, he used police chalk outline around the bodies of volunteer homicide victims, then splashed some red paint on the outline and left a realistic looking crime scene. And he did this in 15 major cities across the United States and Canada. He then went on to do some Shadowman paintings, for which he is probably best known. His crime scenes would have seen the effect of startling or shocking passersby. So in 1979, Hambleton moved permanently to the Lower East Side of New York. It was in New York that he gained his notoriety for his Shadowman paintings in the early 1980s. And there's a little bit of hint of what you might see in Banksy's work now, these sort of black silhouettes of, I think it's just men, in silhouette on the sides of buildings in New York, placed in places that are maybe unlikely or where you might happen upon them and be a bit scared or shocked by them. Each painting resembled a life-size silhouetted image of a mysterious person, a splashy shadow figure. Now, the way he did these was with a paintbrush and quite loose wet paint, and to watch him do it on videos is quite impressive because they're extremely quick, which of course he had to do for his the fact that he was doing graffiti and it was illegal, so he had to be quick and move quickly, and he got really quite adept at this, and the gestures and the positions of these people and the speed he did it really is quite impressive. So these shadow paintings were splashed and brushed with black paint on hundreds of buildings and other structures across New York City. Locations were believed to be calculated for maximum impact on unsuspecting pedestrians. Very often, Shadowmen could be found in a dark alley or lurking just around the street corner. Hamilton later expanded the scope of his project and painted these Shadowmen in other cities, including Paris, London, and Rome. And in 1984, he painted 17 life-size figures on the east side of the Berlin Wall, returning a year later to paint more figures on the west side of the wall. In 1983, during Malcolm McLaren's fashion design partnership with Vivienne Westwood. They collaborated with Hambleton to create a Shadowman jersey skirt, which is interesting. So he was placing himself well. He was not only a street artist, but as you see, he was going to famous fashion centres and art centres around the world, Paris, London and Rome, and also working with fashion designers and things like that. So not only was a street artist, he sort of must have had some kind of moxie and knowledge on how to get on in the world of art. And he certainly went on to do gallery art after that. After his public art, he produced a variation of his shadow work, showing a shadow man as some sort of rodeo man or rugged Marlborough man, often riding a bucking horse. This series was painted on canvas and other materials, and they were displayed as works of art. They're quite impressive to look at, the way he uses the paint and the fact that he sort of makes the gestures even more complicated and to imply movement of the bucking horse. We'll have a look at those in a moment. I'm just going to have a sip of my cocoa. Hambleton appropriated and modified the image to create a new series of works. So from the American hero of the Marlborough advertisements, which you may remember if you're getting on a bit like me. Hambleton then produced a series of pieces titled The Beautiful Paintings or Beautiful Paintings with strong use of colour. These pieces were very different to his shadow work. Hambleton stated that this was a reaction against the abundance of figurative painting displayed in galleries at the time, which he chose not to include figurative work of his own. Hambleton said that he also intentionally sought out a different mood with a different sensibility from his previous work. Okay, let's scroll down and find all of his works. Let's see how many there are. There's 34 on Wiki, a great resource for looking at art and paintings of many, many artists that you could ever possibly think of. And because he is perhaps emerging now as a gallery artist, now some of the sort of high street galleries, and people are trying to market him because he probably didn't get the initial fame of Basquiat, maybe because his breadth wasn't as great, and maybe he was initially better known than Basquiat. Basquiat painted a skull over one of his Shadowmen to try and gain more notoriety, but obviously we know that Basquiat went on to be much more well known. But his work is coming into galleries now, and I think a lot of galleries are looking to push his work because they know there's a lot of potential markup in his paintings in relation to the paintings itself, for hundreds of millions of Basquiat. And for that reason, there's probably limited paintings on here because some photographs and things like that are probably still quite fiercely copyright protected at the moment, unlike older artworks which would be out of copyright and anyone can do anything with them, in at least the photographs. Right, so here is, let's see if we can go into the full screen mode. Image, Mass Murder, 1977. So this is photographs of one of his first sort of mass murder images, paintings, shall we call it a painting? Public art, let's call it. And there we go, we see the outline with the red splat on the floor. And I did see him talk about how he was trying his hardest to get the colour of blood and the texture of blood in his work, which reminded me a little bit of when Francis Bacon talked about when he was painting the mouth, having a very specific colour and sort of texture and maybe voluptuous moistness to it, and to try and capture those feelings. Blood, maybe you could see that in a similar way, and I think he was trying to do that, and I think it's probably quite difficult. It'd be interesting to know if he thought he ever did quite manage it. And the idea is you'd happen upon these and they'd shock you, and then it'd probably not take you too long to realise that somebody had done it as a piece of graffiti, and then maybe it might be quite amusing. And this was at the beginnings of sort of the New York and street arts sort of scene, graffiti scene. It was quite interesting because a lot of sort of magazines, art magazines, and photographers would document all this stuff, and musicians and stuff would be interested, and it really made quite a sort of bubbling and interesting art scene in general. There was probably not many sort of publications nowadays looking into street art and things like that. You know, we've all heard of Banksy, and maybe people have heard one or two others, and that's probably about it. I Only Have Eyes for You, 1980. So I guess this is just a photograph of Hambleton. I don't really know the history of that. It's got a nice shadow on the back. Must be used with a strong flash in front onto white. The hand tucked under the jacket is quite interesting, almost like there could be a weapon in there, but also maybe close to his heart, and the hand in the pocket as well, also like he could be hiding a weapon. The eyes are quite interesting to look at. Hamilton had a lifelong relationship with drugs. He did make it into his 60s, so he managed to sort of continue working and manage that relationship. But I think many people around him would have agreed that it wasn't particularly super helpful for him. So here's Fountain of Youth, 1982, so one of his Shadowmen paintings, almost like they're pinned to the wall, with their hands sort of like trying to hold on and slipping down with the sliding of the paint there. We've got an idea of some kind of perspective with the foot at the bottom left here being further back, and this interesting X here as well, and the splattering and everything. I did try to do this myself, and I found it extremely difficult, the sort of freedom within it, yet the quite accurate representation of silhouette of a figure. The depth is interesting as well. When I tried, it was very much flatter than that. We'll be having another go. So here they are on the side of a building. So this one's got kind of a cool hat on. I guess this guy has too. And they already here look a little bit like cowboys, don't they? So maybe that's where the later Marlboro American Hero man came from. So just there, along with some of the other graffiti, and Basquiat did come in and paint a skull over one of these to gain more notoriety. He at the time was a graffiti artist working with one of his friends under the tag Samo for Samo shit, and then moved on to painting. Here we are, this is the Basquiat skull over one of the Shadowmen. Works well, nicely together, I think. Not tagged, or at least I can't see it with any sort of signature or anything. Very nice. Little can down at the bottom there. So this one's called Jumping Shadowman. It's got a little bit more motion and swirl to it. Now, 1983. Are we still on the streets here? This is one of the difficulties for us to know what's on the streets and what isn't for us right now here in Wiki Art. But of course, this is just an introduction to the artist and his work, and we can all do any research that we want to try and find out more. Although information on him is relatively restricted, there is a movie, a documentary of his life, which I couldn't find to watch for free and haven't got around to searching for in any more detail, but I certainly would like to see it, and that would probably be the most exhaustive source of information, other than people who are still living and knew him, I guess. So he did often sometimes work in white on black in the reverse, and this one's very nice. It reminds me of like fireworks sparklers with the splashing of the white there. It's very like light and this almost dancing figure. Again, you might think it's basic to start with, but if you look at the posture and the gesture with this foot going off back into the distance and this foot over here in this almost dancing pose, it almost gives like rave culture vibes as well, like dancing in a darkened field with, sometimes you spin those fire chains with fires on the end and make all patterns with those as well, wouldn't you? Well, on occasion we did back in those days. I was a bit too young for 1983, but certainly in the late 90s, that kind of feeling, certainly a party kind of feel, a celebration, and very nice. So now we've moved on a little bit in time. So here's Marlboro Man type things. Untitled Skipper Marlboro. So this one's not really got any of the gestures to it. It's quite interesting. Is it actually done on? Because it's got the writing on there. Is it done on some kind of... I don't think it is a cigarette packet. Maybe some kind of cigarette box or something. I don't know. And then it's got the horse coming on there, and a little bit of a landscape vibe as well. It's interesting. It looks quite small. I could be wrong, but the metal frame makes me think it might not be super big. Slippery when wet, so more movement again, and using the gestures in the paint as well to show the movement, and the foot going up there, moving down. It's quite nicely done. And some people said he was a genius because of the way he could handle the paint so quickly and just get it on there and it just looked right. And I don't think there's any disputing that. It transcends abstraction and realism quite well, and in some way, and street art sort of vibe as well. In a lot of ways, that kind of is what street art is. Like, if you think about some of the way street art's done, it is quite maybe like some of Picasso's portraits, maybe some influence there, and the way the paint goes on from the spray can and stuff like that, but then modernized a little bit and mixed maybe with some elements of realism and some elements of almost cartoon-like nature, sort of all mixing together, and it really does lend itself to that kind of thing. This is interesting. Burning Merit. Is he working on... I need to find out more about this. What's this black stripe doing here? Is Merit another type of cigarette? I do not know. This is quite nice. The ship's here and on fire. Some kind of maybe war frigate or something like that. I'm no expert on military ships. It could be a corvette or a frigate. I really wouldn't know. Almost like a nighttime scene as well up here with the darker blues, but certainly nice to look at, and it does show a little bit more of range for him. Another Shadowman, jumping Shadowman. And then sort of jaunty angle, we've got the exploding paint at the top here. And the same movement and dancing sort of vibe here. I think it does change a little bit as he gets later on into his career. Oh, this is a nice one. Magic Man. So this is another Shadowman, but done sort of with the pinks and whites in profile. That black line again making an appearance, which is quite interesting. And almost gives a Rothko vibe, doesn't it, in the colours and the relation between them, and that black line there on the side. And then again, the figure, harder to make out maybe in this case, but certainly be something that I would be happy to hang on my wall, and I certainly wouldn't have the money to buy it, but it would certainly be more affordable and available right now than his contemporaries. So, one could aspire. So here we are, first proper Marlboro Man type painting, really, maybe. Horse and Rider with like 1999. So if you look at the way he's done the paint here with his whites, sort of not quite getting the paint down here, the highlights for it, the top of the hat there, very subtle, and the front of the body, then this arm coming down, and the bucking horse. It's got this amazing mixture of total freedom and chaos, but also extreme precision. And there's a considerable light source here coming in from the top down onto the back of the horse there on its hind leg, and on the side there, and up onto the front of the torso, the top of the torso of the Marlboro Man. A bit of the ground there. It's very nicely done. Did he paint this in before the American Stripes? And that's done, if it is, very subtly and skillfully, on quite a high level of sort of realism to it. At the bottom, a lot more rough, maybe that's not the right word, but if you understand what I mean, it's just kind of left blank on the background, and we've just got this splashing floor here. Okay, so this is a standing shadow. So here shadows are a little bit more stationary, and we've got a sort of hint of a hand here. And then this one, you can see the brushes come down on the head, the way the ears are done, and the fact that there's a hand in the pocket, and these feet almost in like skateboard shoes, a little bit of the jeans there coming out. It's very cool. The black line again at the bottom there, maybe the end, sort of sidewalk or curb edge, as we'd say. Shadow head portrait in gold. So this is done in gold. That's smaller, isn't it? And that's nicely done. And he would do commissions, and he did do a commission of his what he called Friends. I think it was called the Friends or something, and it had Keith Haring and Basquiat and Andy Warhol, 3 separate paintings, and I think he was asked to do those for commission and did do those. Like here again, the way the white comes in. Did he add any of that on top? That's a sort of question to ask, and it's got the sort of level of freedom yet precision that I really would desire to have myself. This is very subtle. Standing Shadowman, this is almost like misty and foggy, isn't it? With a little bit of sort of double eyes here. Very nicely done with the sort of white, the thin white, I think probably layered on over the top afterwards. And again, an idea of a light source coming from left down to right. It does give quite a lot of depth. Working very narrow and tall, also like, well, Gustav Klimt used to do that, didn't he? And who else? I forget now. I have another example of somebody who worked tall and thin. Oh, Lowry to some degree. Here we are, another, this one's called Rodeo, so now we've gone black and with white on the top, and again the same sort of idea, lots of splashing on the floor and lots of movement, and very impressively it's a done piece of work again. Nadine 2006. So is this one of his beautiful paintings, or is it just before he's moving into the landscape? Some of the other ones I have seen that aren't on here, that are owned by galleries and things, do seem to be larger than that. I'll just have another sip of cocoa. We've got the gold at the bottom, and then this sort of sepia orange just sort of dripped on. Very much something that I like the look of as well. And also colours that I have and do try and work with. Okay, so Priscilla, similar sort of idea, blues with the white and greys. Very sort of simple, quite serene, almost looks like when ink gets put into water, so the water really has just carried, or the medium, it could have been done as oil in a solvent. And this black bit here that gives the idea of a sort of peninsula or something, or some land over here, and then I'm guessing water here on the front, but you know, maybe a desert or something like that as well. 3 cats, cat stack. Now, everybody loves cats, but I cannot bring myself to sort of paint a cat, get into the cat world. But if I'm going to look at a painted cat, I would like to look at this one. It's nice, and I like the way the tail's done, and then into the solid black from where it's sort of, did he go that way and run out of paint and make it work like that? I guess so. And then the splash and the way it arches up on its back is also skillfully done. Is this some kind of print though, to get the 3 different colours? He did do prints of his works. So I think this is definitely one of the beautiful paintings that he talks about. And it's called Sophia 2006. And in some ways it is almost impressionistic, isn't it? We've got some nice perspective there, heading off into a vantage point. So using all the well-known tricks of the landscape artist, and would we dare to say Monet-like? It's got a different look to it than that, hasn't it? But it's certainly got that sort of level of softness, or maybe a little bit more of an idea of the paint doing what it wants, sort of soaking in and just not quite being pushed into saying I am this, I am that, just left a little bit more like patterns of the paint of how it's reacted on the sort of canvas or whatever medium it's been put onto. Shadow jumpers. So here we are. This reminds me a bit of sort of a colour field painting again, really, but with the red and the black is very reminiscent of that. And we have got sort of like some hands and feet. So you've got the shadow jumper, and these Rothko colours, reds and blacks, and sort of done in lines. So maybe a nod to that too. And obviously Rothko was a New York painter, I believe. I certainly hung out there, the New York art scene. Magdalena. So more of the oranges, very nicely done. This is almost like a face here as well, isn't it? With some hair and just simple. Definitely, I could see why galleries might push this stuff, because it's hangable, isn't it? You'd have that quite happily in your living space, and everyone would probably like it. Yet, I still think it has a sort of uniqueness to it. That's it's not too sort of run of the mill, is it? It's still quite unique, but also accessible. This is interesting up here. Did he do something extra here? Almost scratching, line making up here. And then he has let it just run dark down here. Now, how did he keep this line at the bottom? Did he tape it? Or did he paint over that there with some very opaque paint? Back to another rodeo painting. Front on view, horse there. You can see its mouth, its eyes. It's very well done. Its hooves, a lot of chaos, a lot of movement, some kind of lasso up there. I mean, it's impressive. For me, sort of horses and rodeos and that kind of thing, I don't know much about them, so, and I'm not much of an equestrian in the sort of UK sense either, so for me, a bit of a loss with horses, although Riding with Death, sort of the painting by Basquiat, Riding with Death is one of my favourite paintings, but that's kind of like a skeleton horse, so not really the same. Now here we see the really interesting gestures, the cool, laid back, almost like he's in a tuxedo or something. It reminds me, Stand in Shadow 2013, reminds me of like how a hip-hop singer might stand to be photographed like one of the Beastie Boys or Jay-Z or something. But this is a bit later in 2013, and he's putting a little bit of yellow on the sides there and the black, and it's done in a very street art. And this is where you might say something Banksy-esque is coming in, but obviously Banksy uses stencils a lot. This is done freehand, and I think in some respects shows a little bit more pure artistic skill in terms of just how it's applied. And Banksy likes to put a lot of thought into what his stuff's saying, whereas this may be just a person standing there looking damn cool, and he's letting the way the paint's applied speak for itself and almost showing off his own skill in that respect. And it does just ooze coolness. Same here again, a little bit more darker, this one, a little bit more mysterious maybe. Similar kind of leaning back pose on the top, and the legs standing forwards. Bit of depth there as well, nicely done. Not sure what this is supposed to be here, whether it's holding something. It's interesting. And then some Shadowman again, jumping, like landing on a window or something, or maybe if you're under a glass ceiling, a glass roof, and they sort of jump down and land above you. The hands are very well done, because it's almost got like the movement of streaking down as it lands, and it sort of left marks as the hands would on sort of glass, and then you've got the actual figures, a little hint of a mouth, more so on the right hand side one. Also there's a kind of almost animal like face as well, and a little bit on the left, a lot left to the imagination, But then on the bottom with the feet, it's definitely like this guy's got shoes on, and so is this guy, and again using highlights very skillfully. Interesting to know whether he did scrape that off or just go around it with his brush. Something tells me he probably just could do it without having to go over it. And again, the paint just running down and dripping down for that very natural and free look. Just a little shadow head, a little painted ink-esque like sketch. Maybe it's on some kind of paper that's had a previous use underneath it. And we've got the last painting next. Still, I think people probably still getting his work together really, and I think a lot of it is in gallery, so it's not on here necessarily, because they may well chase down what they would see as their photographs if they photograph them for their catalogues and things like that. So maybe more to come and more to learn about, and maybe somewhere you could even find somewhere in local high street galleries. There could be at least prints of this stuff up to go and check out yourself. Shadow head, question mark. So we don't know if this is an early or later piece. Something tells me it's a later piece because of the use of the colour. And we've got the cool little sort of, what's the word? I'd say pigtails, but it's not really, is it? 2 splashes either side of the hair there. Some quite big ears. And it's hard to tell whether that's from behind the person or whether the person's looking at us. I almost feel like it's behind. I don't know why. What do you guys think? So there we go. Richard Hambleton. I will do a paint and chat about him, where I will have an attempt at doing a Shadowman painting myself. That'll hopefully be coming at some point, but you know, it's the festive period and life is busy, so I'm going to try and keep uploading regularly, but it might not be quite as frequent as I would like. But anyway, until next time, Dead Art Studios. See you later.